My goal for the next few minutes is to primarily focus on that second reading, especially those words from St. Paul, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ," which essentially is the same as saying, be imitators of Christ. And I'm going to try and tie this in with Lent. As you know, Lent is beginning this Wednesday, whether we're ready for it or not. I know I'm personally not. But the idea, I'm going to try and make a point of maybe approaching Lent, if just invite us to approach Lent in this way. I'm going to take us on a few roundabouts, and I hope we get to the point. If not, I apologize in advance. But this idea of Lent, I always imagine, especially as Ash Wednesday begins, that individually we each walk with Jesus side by side in the desert, and I can picture walking with him. And Lent is that time where for 40 days we're invited by the church to spend more time, more of our energy, more of our focus on this idea of how we share in the life, the death, and the resurrection of Christ. And so we enter the desert with Jesus. We walk with him throughout his life. We even enter Jerusalem with him in Holy Week. We're there at his Last Supper. We're there during his suffering and his crucifixion and even his death. And we do all of that for the sole purpose that we can rise with him on Easter Sunday. And that's that journey of Lent. There is a passage in the Gospel of Matthew that talks about, it's after Jesus prays in the garden and he's arrested, and Peter cuts off the ear. Jesus turns to him and says something like, "Don't you know I could call 12 legions of angels down to rescue me, to minister to me?" And there's always that question, why doesn't Jesus do that? When he's hanging on the cross, when he's carrying the cross, that through all that suffering that he's enduring, why doesn't he ever call the angels down to come and rescue him, if you will, in that moment? And I always think about that because I wonder if he did that, would the people who saw all that, would they believe? Would that be that I mean, if he did that, would that just create faith throughout the whole world? Some of the saints kind of asked that question too in the early church fathers, and one of them, and I can't remember who it is, but one of them says that the reason that Jesus doesn't call down 12 legions of angels during his time of crucifixion is because he doesn't want to. And the reason is he has you and I to minister to him in his time of need. He has you and I to minister to his crucifixion. He has you and I to minister to his wounds. We are the people who come up to him like Veronica does in the Stations of the Cross. We are the people who come up to him and wipe the blood from his face as it drips from this crown of thorns. We're the people that attends to the holes in his hands and his feet and his side. And the reason I say that and think that and believe that, and I'm sure the saints who said that thought that too, is that in the Eucharistic prayer, prayer 2, after the consecration and the mystery of faith, there's this paragraph. "Therefore, as we celebrate the memorial of his death and resurrection, we offer you, Lord, the bread of life and chalice of salvation." And this is the part that I always think about. "Giving thanks that you have held us worthy to be in your presence and minister to you." So many times we come in here and we think about Christ being in our presence and ministering to us. But perhaps Lent can be that point of season is what does it mean for us to be in the presence of Christ and minister to him? How is it that we go about each day ministering to the wounds of Christ, to our crucified Lord? There's other phrases too that we can think about that help us to understand that is Jesus teaching the words, "Whatever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, you do to me." Being in the presence and ministering to him. At the Last Supper, after he washes the feet, Jesus turns to his apostles and says, "What I have just done, you are now to do for others. As I have loved you, you are to love others." And then he says, "I no longer call you servants, I call you friends." Why? Because that's what friends do. We take care of each other's needs. We minister to others. We have compassion for others. We suffer with others. That's what friends do. And that's, to me, is what kind of the season of Lent is about, is growing in that friendship and enjoying that friendship that we have with Christ. Okay, now, and I'm going to go back to that idea of imitating, be imitators of Christ. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. So I'm going to try and tie this all into the readings right now. That's why Jesus came into the world. He came into the world to show us how to be human beings, the idea of what we're created in, to show us what it means to love and to be loved. Jesus came into the world to be in our presence and minister to us. And we see that in the gospel story. During the time of Jesus and leading up to that, all of the time, that at any time someone got any kind of rash or skin disease, it was a fear of leprosy. And so there was this great speculation among many of the people who thought that the reason you got this skin disease was because there was something that you did or something that your ancestors did, and you're being punished for your sins. Jesus comes onto the scene to say that that's not true. Jesus is not afraid to be in the presence of lepers like the other people were during his time. He's not afraid to have conversation with the leper. He's not even afraid to touch the leper, as we heard in the gospel story today. Why? Because he has such a merciful heart. He has compassion. And he's setting for us the example that this is the way that we can imitate him, is by having compassion for others, the willingness to suffer and walk with others along the way. All right. I think I'm going to stop. I think you get my point. So if nothing else, happy Lent. It's coming Friday. And happy Valentine's Day as a side note, too.